Okay. So this is just like the stuff that I'm gonna take in with me to trials for the most part. I'm gonna look at all my characters. I've got different stuff on different characters for different reasons. I'm not gonna dive into all the different things that make it really particular for why I'm doing certain things certain ways, but I'll give you like some insight, I guess, on stuff that I'm taking into trials with me for fun, to have a good time in the PvP zone, where everybody's EP is massive and mine is small. So here, this is my hunter. This is kind of like my main character for the most part. I've got a pretty solid build that revolves around Dragon Shadow, and most of my weapons are going to be synergizing with Dragon Shadow as much as possible. 52 mobility, 70 resilience, 100 recovery, all that kind of stuff. It's numbers that will matter only if you're bad at the game, right? Or if you're good at the game, either way. So Vigilant Swing I think is in a pretty good spot. Right now I'm probably going to take that with me. That might be like my main go-to weapon currently. If not that, then I'll probably use like Ace of Spades or Thorn as like a primary. So an exotic primary is really good. Chaperone is like an alternative that I'd probably use. So those are all pretty decent. Thorn's in a really good spot in the sandbox currently. It plays really well in 3v3. A lot of the hand cannons do. Pulses can be kind of, you know, they can be good, they can be bad. It just depends on what you're up against. Revoker is going to be a staple of a lot of people's loadouts, so I'm going to bring that with me. It's a really good snipe. And then I've also got Izanagi's in here too. I think it's a pretty decent snipe as well. Got some interesting utility that you can take into trials with you if you're up a couple of rounds. And then we've got like the shotgun. Right now this isn't performing very well. It's a miracle that it even has 300 kills on it, because it just blank shots left and right. Valakadin, that's a future call. This is Claws of the Wolf. I'll probably take this in. That's a really strong primary. This is a really weird combo fusion rifle that I like fiddling around with. Probably pair that with like Thorn or something else. Hardlight, another weapon I think is in a good spot. Lemon Arc if I'm playing with a good team. And I'm playing team shots. And then as far as heavies go, all these things are kind of intermixable. It doesn't really matter what I'm using. Hammerhead's just a pretty solid go-to. I probably won't use Delirium, that's in my inventory for PvE. Wendigo's also kind of in my inventory for PvE. And then in the background, I'm just gonna like mix it around a little bit so you can see like Chaperone, Claws of the Wolf, seems fine. Doesn't really matter, Chaperone's a good shotgun. Claws of the Wolf, or not Claws of the Wolf, but Valakadin, Chaperone, also fine, seems fine. No reason not to. Thorn, this weird fusion rifle, why not? Thorn in a shotgun, why not? Thorn in another shotgun, why not? Chaperone in another thing, or a bow in a shotgun, or hard light in a shotgun. It doesn't. These are just like a bunch of like the weapons that I've cherry picked for my hunter, just because I think they'll play pretty well with the build that I've got. Pretty classic standards there. They all mix pretty well. They all cover different ranges a little differently. Snipes are, you know, obviously pretty important in some games, where shotguns are better in others, and sometimes an exotic heavy is good if your team is good at capitalizing on the heavy and controlling that zone. Sometimes you don't really need an exotic heavy, and you benefit more from an exotic primary or an exotic secondary or something like that. It kind of depends. I'll probably be sticking with Gunslinger, bottom tree, and if I'm not going to do that, then Way of the Warrior is definitely one of my favorites right now. And then if not that, then Top Tree Night Stalker. You can't really go wrong with Top Tree Night Stalker. It's kind of in a good spot. Being able to shut down supers with Tether is pretty nice. Middle tree's not bad. I don't mind middle tree, but top tree health on melee is pretty decent, and getting that increased melee lunge distance, especially with the way that warlocks are getting a buff to their range distance as well. I want to be able to compete with them, shut them down. So that's probably the subclass of choice for me, if I'm not using the other two. Titan, I've got a little bit of a different setup for my Titan. There's a few things that are more constrained and a few things that aren't. So my kinetic, it's basically just one shotgun, one sniper, and then an alternative one if I need it, depending on where the rapid fire shotguns are at. This one's fine. It does a bunch of different stuff pretty well. Range stuff. It's got rifled and full choke, so I don't really need to switch that out too much. Revoker, again, I've got a second Revoker that I keep on this character. and sniping with the Titan is fine. So this is probably what I'll be using the most, is Waking Vigil. Waking Vigil Revoker or Waking Vigil in a shotgun. Either are fine. So there doesn't really need to be too much deviation with that. And then I've also got Synthos on. Synthosepts have never really been bad. If I feel like I really have to mix it up, then I might put on this Wings Maul, because it bridges the gap between PvE and PvP, because it has concussion grenades or spike grenades. You can put like a quick access sling and quick swap between like Ace of Spades or Thorn or something like that. Or just run like double heavy or double special and do like grenade launcher snipe, things like that. You can do that. Got another good Emperor's Courtesy roll, which is fine. Probably going to keep that in my inventory. And then I've got a bunch of like fiddly exotics. Devil's Ruin, something I'm trying to improve with. Hardlight, I think, is going to be in a great spot. Fighting Line is actually really cool. Teraba, I use every once in a while. If I'm using a different subclass, I might put that on. Risk Runner, if I'm playing up against things like Shinobu's Vow. As far as heavies go, Two-Tailed's not terrible. The Colony's not bad. And then can kind of use Black Talon for 3 peeking, stuff like that. I've got a Doomsday with full court, which is not bad. Fixed odds with firmly planted and no distractions, so remove the flinch. And then a pretty decent rocket launcher with tracking and cluster with high velocity. So it's hard to counter it, hard to react to it at least. So I'll probably like keep this in my inventory as well. It's not a bad rocket. It's not Wardcliff Coil, but it's not a bad rocket. If I'm using like an exotic primary like Ace or something else, then it's not terrible. I think as far as Titan subclasses go, I don't really have like a preference. I think middle tree of Solar Titan is really good, and bottom tree of Solar is also really good right now. If I was going to use an arc-based subclass for Titan, I'd definitely pick middle tree, but that's just personal preference because I like the way that class feels in general. And it's got a lot of advantages to it. I think it's going to play very well in the future and in Trials, so that's what I would do. But I'll be sticking with like some of the Void subclasses for right now. Warlock is a class I play quite a bit. So I've got like a bunch of really random stuff on it. I've got more diversity in my exotics than I have on my other characters because there's a lot more different builds that do different things. Even though the weapons might not change as much, the exotics kind of affect the build that I'm using a little bit more. But I've got a pretty good selection of a variety of exotics to do a variety of different builds. So my Warlock character is probably going to be the most changing character. My Hunter is the most fixed character. It's usually just going to be Dragon Shadow, and if it's not that, then I have very few other options that I use for builds on my Hunter just because of the way that it feels to play. But Warlock tends to have, and it's kind of similar for my Titan, but my Warlock tends to have like a fixed or the most variance to its playstyle. So this is a pretty cool auto I saw. This gets up to like 111 bullets in the magazine if I pick up one special brick, so that's kind of weird. I like it. It's getting a little bit of a buff. Outlast in case. I like the Ikelos SMG actually kind of right now. Feeling that. It's pretty decent. I've got a quick snap beloved. Mindbenders in case. Really nice Emperor's Courtesy. Recluse if I have to be that guy. And then Tekken Force. This is a pretty sweet fusion. I think these are going to be pretty cool in the new sandbox. Four-burst Pulse. These two weapons, the Loud Lullaby and the Four-burst, those are just to capitalize on light advantage if I happen to get one. Because the hand cannons might be meaningful against really low light characters. Mountaintop, obviously, why wouldn't I? Sticky Grenades a la Cami Cakes. It's a pretty decent pick. I've got a weird Bastion build that I want to try. Using the new Verity's Brow mechanics. Because Verity's Brow is getting a buff to grenade damage based on the amount of kills that you get, and based on the amount of stacks that you have of Death Throws, which is the exotic perk, which recharges your grenade, you and your teammates. So that's going. So I might try and do like some weird grenade stuff with Verity's Brow. And I've got an old one from year 2 that has a light reactor and snipe remote connection and stuff too. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes. It pairs pretty well with a lot of stuff. Got high grenade recharge rates, so I can do that. Good time there. Bastion's weird though. Bastion is very weird on MNK. I kind of struggle with it, but that's okay. I'm still kind of new to it. Pulse rifles are fine. I like that pulse. This arc logic goes with it too, depending on which one feels better between the pulse or the arc logic. We'll see. We'll see about that. What else do we have? What else do we have? Like Chaperone and an auto. Why not? You know? Stag. I like Astrocyte Burst though, because I tend to play on Void subclasses anyways, and I think the changes coming to Void Walker are going to be decent. A little too strong in some cases, but I think it's still going to be a good subclass to play on. Plenty of options to play around with. Mountaintop Ikelos combo is a thing. Ikelos and Thorn if I have to play Starvation. If people are spawning with special. Claws of the Wolf, or that's not Claws of the Wolf, that's an Emperor's Courtesy, that's a shotgun. That's not a pulse rifle. I don't have a Claws of the Wolf in this character. Sometimes I do. Not today. Yeah, so just a bunch of weird stuff that I'm taking in. Some characters, again, more flexible than others. Some of them less flexible, just for varieties of different reasons. Like I said, not too deep today into what I'm taking in, but that's like the look of what I'm probably bringing in.